Chris Ferguson indicating that Rex Walheim is getting consistent marks through the handheld laser that he's using.
Atlantis on the big loop. Yeah, what we think is going on is you've got good handheld laser, of course, and we do think it's reflector too, but the attitude is so out in RPOP, so that's probably accounting for it. Once the maneuver stops in a few degrees, then we'll have a new ISS attitude for you.
Okay, we copy, Steve, and per our training, we're going to focus mainly on HHL throughout this.
Roger and concur.
Still 659 with 0 opening.
Roger, Atlantis. Atlantis, we think you can put in the new station attitude now on RPOP. Pitch yaw roll would be 270.00 when the maneuver is complete, but as you can see, it's pretty close.
Okay, we'll do that.
Hey, we've got an update from rendezvous. Pitch yaw roll is 270.0.
Pitch yaw roll 270.0.
Good readback.
Atlantis sitting rock steady, 659 feet in front of the International Space Station, about 2.5 minutes to go in the yaw maneuver, and the attitude determination and control officer, as well as the power systems officer in the station flight control room, reporting everything looking good, and that temperatures on the struts for the solar arrays have come down a bit, so it appears as if we're in good shape. This yaw maneuver should be able to be completed fully to its full 90-degree yaw, and then the initiation of the half-lap fly-around by pilot Doug Hurley will get underway. You can see the 4 vehicles as appendages from the Russian segment of the International Space Station, 2 Soyuz vehicles, 2 Progress resupply vehicles at the International Space Station for the 6 crew members comprising the Expedition 28 crew. And to illustrate this 90-degree maneuver on the far right of the longitudinal axis of the space station, that is pressurized mating adapter number 2, from which Atlantis undocked 55 minutes ago.
.71 feet on the HHL Houston, and it looks like that update of the attitude in RPOP has put us a little closer. 689 or so is what we're seeing. I assume you're seeing the same.
Okay, copy Atlantis. Yep, we are.
Updates from Commander Chris Ferguson, who's receiving the rendezvous tool information from Rex Walheim and Sandy Magnus. Atlantis around 671 feet away.
Panel R1 for our crowd config.
Go ahead, we're ready on R1.
Panel R1, O2, tank 3, heaters Alpha and Bravo, 2 switches to auto.
O2, tank 3, heaters A and B, both are in auto.
Thank you, Fergie.
And Station Atlantis, you'll be happy to know you look just as good from the side as you do from the front.
Thanks, Bergen. Not sure how to answer that one, but thanks.
Hey, and that's our good side.
What he said.
Chris Ferguson and Ron Garan admiring each other at a distance of 675 feet. We are about a minute away from completing the yaw maneuver, at which point Ron Garan will have the station in the correct orientation through the Russian thrusters on the international outpost, and Doug Hurley aboard Atlantis will be able to initiate his half-lap fly-around. And the space station now in the correct orientation, having completed its 90-degree yaw.
Atlantis Houston in Block 8 Alpha. Step 5, you have a go for the fly around, 9 Alpha.
Copy, go for the fly around. We're in Block 9 Alpha with you. We've loaded the maneuver already, and if you're happy, we'll give you the item 19.
We're ready for it.
The International Space Station completed its 90-degree yaw maneuver almost to the second on the timeline that was laid out in the preparation for this activity, beginning that yaw maneuver at 1:55 a.m. Central Time, completing it at 2:26 a.m. Central Time. So with the station in the proper orientation, pilot Doug Hurley now initiating his half-lap fly-around. This will put Atlantis at a radial distance of about 670 feet away from the station. He will first fly to a point basically in a reverse flip, if you will, to a point about 670 feet directly above the station, then behind the station, where the first of two firings of reaction control system jets will take place. The SEP-1 burn to take place at a point about 670 feet on the velocity vector, but directly behind the complex, and then the final separation burn to depart the International Space Station for the last time, occurring at a point at which Atlantis will be directly below the station. A very good view of the International Space Station. On the far left, docked to the aft end of the Zvezda service module, that is the ISS Progress 43 resupply ship that arrived at the International Space Station on June 23rd. The two vehicles that are docked at opposite ports vertically to the longitudinal axis of the station. The space-facing side belongs to the Poisk module. Docked to the zenith port of the service module is the Poisk. That is the 26 Soyuz vehicle that arrived on April 6th, or the Soyuz TMA-21. That is the vehicle for Andrei Barasenko, Alexander Samakutyaev, and Ron Garan. Directly opposite that, on the Earth-facing port, that is the Pirs docking compartment. That is the residence at the moment for the ISS Progress 42 resupply ship that arrived on April 29th. And next to it, sort of in the middle of the longitudinal axis, that is the Rosviet module and the home of the 27 Soyuz vehicle, or the Soyuz TMA-02M spacecraft that delivered Sergei Volkov, Satoshi Furukawa, and Mike Fossum to the International Space Station in early June. This view through the centerline camera in the orbiter docking system of the International Space Station as...
the big loop, we're enjoying the view of the station through the centerline camera. If there's a time when you want to downlink something other than the centerline camera too, we're okay with that.
Okay, stand by.
Atlantis and the International Space Station separated by 648 feet, flying over China at the moment, moving from northwest to southeast. At the aft flight deck of Atlantis, pilot Doug Hurley is at the controls as he continues the fly around that will take Atlantis to a point about 645 or so feet directly above the International Space Station a short time from now, then to a point behind the station for the first of two firings of reaction control system jets in a two-step separation maneuver that will enable Atlantis to depart the station for the final time. The first of these two burns scheduled about 15.5 minutes from now. In the Space Station Flight Control Room, the Power Systems Officer has reported and is keeping Flight Director Jerry Jason updated on the temperatures on the longerons of the solar arrays, the struts, if you will. The temperatures are still holding in, looking acceptable. No issues at the moment as Atlantis continues its fly around. Once the separation maneuver is executed by Doug Hurley to enable Atlantis to depart the station, then the International Space Station will be maneuvered back into its normal orientation for operations. Sandy Magnus and Rex Walheim are equipped with a variety of digital cameras and high-powered lenses. They are documenting the exterior of the International Space Station at this unique view, where the longitudinal axis of the station is being presented to them thanks to this 90-degree yaw maneuver. Almost directly above the International Space Station, you can see the varying views, the solar arrays that are angled through the beta gimbal assemblies to optimize solar array absorption of sunlight to be converted into electricity.
Okay, we'll set up reflector 4.
On the far right of the axis of the space station, that is the Harmony module in the horizontal position. Basically, as you look at this view, that's where Atlantis was docked to. And on either side, those two large modules. At the bottom is the European Space Agency's Columbus laboratory. And on the top of Harmony, as you look at this view from directly above the space station, is the large Japanese segment of the complex, the Kibo module, and its external experiment platform. Atlantis now beginning to move to a position behind the space station, maintaining a radial distance of about 685 feet or so. The fly around going very well, and all of the space station systems looking good.
Block 10 Alpha and Mark Houston.
Copy 10 Alpha. We think we're on TCS reflector 3 now.
You got clipped off there, Steve. Which reflector do you think?
Reflector 3, we think.
Okay, reflector 3, Steve, and we're seeing about 685 on the range on the HHL. It's been pretty consistent.
Copy.
You can see the jets firing on Atlantis. Doug Hurley in control of the aft flight deck. Atlantis and the International Space Station separated by 685 feet, flying over the Indonesian island chain.
Atlanta Station on the big loop. We see you from Sergey's bedroom window. That's great news. Thanks, Station. You guys look good from here.
Flight engineer Ron Garin admiring the view of Atlantis. Chris Ferguson responding. Doug Hurley busy flying Atlantis at the moment. The orbiter is behind the International Space Station. We're about 6 minutes away from the first of 2 separation maneuvers. The first burn, a SEP-1 burn, is a 1.5 foot per second radial downward burn that will enable Atlantis to move to a position directly below the station for the final separation burn, a SEP-2 burn, which is a larger component, 10 feet per second, a retrograde burn that will enable Atlantis to depart the station for the final time.
Houston, we're going to auto the data on the radar.
Can we go for that, Fergie?
It has been almost an hour and 20 minutes since Atlantis undocked from the International Space Station. The orbiter, under the control of pilot Doug Hurley, moved to a point directly in front of the station of about 600 plus feet and held in a station-keeping position for about 31 minutes to enable the station to maneuver and yaw 90 degrees, presenting the length of the axis of the station, the longitudinal axis of the station, to Atlantis for the beginning of the fly-around that got underway about 22 minutes or so ago. Hurley is now at a position almost directly behind the station at a distance of 671 feet, maintaining a distance. Everything looking very good. Documentation of the station is continuing by Sandy Magnus and Rex Walheim, who are also joining Chris Ferguson up on the flight deck of Atlantis to measure with handheld lasers and other rendezvous tools the distance and the maintenance of the distance of Atlantis from the station's structure. And through the shuttle's S-band communication system, the sequential still video view, this is a frame refreshed view in the absence of a downlink KU band capability at the moment from Atlantis, looking back at the station, which will maneuver back into its normal orientation following a final separation maneuver. We're about 24 seconds away from the first separation burn by pilot Doug Hurley. This will be a 1.5 foot per second radial down burn.
Block 8 Bravo.
Copy. We're with you in 8 Bravo.
This will be about a 4-second burst of the reaction control system jets. And you saw the jets firing. The SEP-1 burn complete.
$16.21.40 for the burn, Houston.
And we see a good SEP-1 burn.
That initial separation maneuver fired by Doug Hurley, this pulse of the reaction control system jets basically hastens Atlantis's traverse down to a position about 671 feet directly below the International Space Station, at which point the second separation burn will take place. This is essentially the final burn in the vicinity of the International Space Station that will enable it to depart.
Atlantis Houston on the big loop with a cleanup step on the SM antenna page.
I know what you're going to tell me.
Roger.
Okay, on the SM antenna page, here comes the item 16.
Thank you, Fergie.
Thanks a lot.
In the Space Station Flight Control Room, Jerry Jason, the station flight director, has indicated that the maneuvering of the International Space Station by Russian thrusters back to the normal orientation should begin about 5 minutes from now. That will enable Atlantis to be in a position almost directly below the International Space Station.
With our fly around, we'll be coming out underneath you and should have a good view from the cupola. I'm not sure when we're going to break down the big loop, but if it's any time soon, we just wanted to give you a final goodbye.
Hey, thanks, Fergie. We'll be watching you from the SM windows, and you guys look really good on the fly around from what we can see. And again, thank you so much for all that you guys have done for us up here. We really, really appreciate it.
You couldn't script it any better, but as Atlantis flies into an orbital sunset, about to execute its second separation burn, Ron Garan communicating with Chris Ferguson as Atlantis approaches a point directly below the International Space Station. That second separation burn will be noted as both Ferguson and Garan, who heads up U.S. orbital segment operations as one of the two NASA flight engineers on board the International Space Station, along with Mike Fossum. The station crew is watching this activity now out of the Zvezda service module windows, their best vantage point for this particular orientation of the station relative to Atlantis. Atlantis and the International Space Station flying just to the southeast of the continent of Australia. Atlantis moments away from departing from the International Space Station for the final time, having undocked almost an hour and a half ago. The fly around is essentially complete. There'll be one more burst of the reaction control system jets. That coming in 21 minutes to complete Atlantis' 12th and final visit to the International Space Station. the last view of Atlantis as both craft have sailed into an orbital sunset. In the space station flight control room, the attitude determination and control officer, basically the station equivalent of the guidance navigation and control officer here in the shuttle room, reporting that the International Space Station has begun its maneuver back into the normal orientation. The fly around now complete, standing by in just a few minutes for the final separation burn that will take Atlantis away from the space station for the last time.
Houston, for this next SEP burn, SEP 2, we show 16:49:40.
Hey, thanks for checking, and we agree with you.
Atlantis, Houston, on the big loop. Hey, go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Fergie, from the ULF-7 Orbit 1 team in the ISS Mission Control Room here in Houston, we just want to let you know that it's been a pleasure and honor to support this, the 37th mission of the Space Shuttle to the ISS. And we're proud to be the last in a countless line of mission control teams that have had the honor to watch over the ISS while Discovery and Endeavour and Atlantis have visited over the last 13 years. From this room, we've watched and supported as the shuttle has enabled the station to grow from a humble single module that was grappled by the shuttle's arm to a stunning facility that is so large that some astronauts have even momentarily gotten lost in it. You can take it from me. So, of course, the ISS wouldn't be here without the space shuttle. So, while we have the communication link up for the last time, we wanted to say thank you and farewell to the magnificent machines that delivered, assembled, and staffed our world-class laboratory in space. So Fergie, Chunky, Sandy, and Rex, get her home safely and enjoy the last couple days in Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Hey, Dan, and to the whole Ficker 1 team and the Orbit 1 team, Jerry, from Jerry on down, we do appreciate those great words. You know, it's been an incredible ride, and I think on behalf of the four of us, we're really appreciative that we had the opportunity to work with you, and extremely fortunate to have taken part in this pivotal mission. We're looking forward to in a couple days to meeting up with most of you and patting you on the back and sharing some of the stories, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that we hope we successfully hid from you. But believe me, there was a little bit of pandemonium between what appeared to be all the calm. And we're glad to be headed home, and we're happy to serve with you. We'll see you, Dan.
Fergie, thanks a million. We'll see you back home. Take care. Have a safe flight.
Veteran astronaut and former expedition crew member Dan Tawney in the space station flight control room with an opportunity to say farewell to Space Shuttle Atlantis and its commander Chris Ferguson